Session for the Planning and Zoning Commission on July 11th, 2023. All right, we'll start out with staff comments.
All right. First of all, I just want to say thank you for citizen comments that were submitted on these topics. It's always helpful to help us kind of see some things that maybe we don't see or maybe see them in a different light. And then two, I did want to note that from those citizen comments, we do have a lay down on just some further language clarification and some additions that we can go over. So this first section is, I did want to just, I do appreciate that Courtney's not here tonight, but she obviously put together a really great packet as always. And so for the first, I guess, conversation, we're going to cover points 1 and 2 on page 2 of just identifying changes to the sign code that will help provide more clarity regarding temporary sign requirements and restrictions. And then the next piece is discuss if adding figures to the sign code will help to visually clarify measurement requirements for signs. So those are kind of, as far as the sign piece goes, those are the two things we'll be going through, and then I can kind of, when we get done with those conversations, I can discuss number 3 at that time. So, but if you'd like, I think we can just probably start going through the definitions here.
Sure.
And so I think it really just, we can go ahead and start with the lay down, and then once we get kind of past that point, we can just go ahead and continue on with the packet at that point.
Okay. So it looks like the first one you have some changes to that was on the banner.
Yeah.
The lay down.
Yeah, and so, and just as kind of a thing is that when a lot of the sign codes was developed, like we didn't have things like what we known as like the feather flags, those things up, and we have like pennants now, we have, and there's different words for different things, and so we're just trying to continue to be very specific when we need to identify things, so that way we can either call them out saying, yes, this is allowed, or this is not allowed. So yeah, but a banner is a temporary sign made of fabric or similar non-rigid material with no enclosing framework, but secured to a solid structure at all 4 corners. So flags should not be considered banners, just because, you know, we're trying to differentiate, because there could be confusions between flags and banners depending on that. So we did want to add that piece to just to a banner.
I have one question later on for this in terms of banners, because you know how people put banners out there and they become frayed, or they become, you know, they become visually unappealing, they don't take them down. And I didn't see it in there. Is there a standard by which we need to establish, okay, well, this is like, you know, torn, you can't read half of it, or something like this, that we could, you know, niche in somewhere for a, you know, a quality control kind of thing? Yes,
we absolutely can.
Okay.
We'll make sure when we come back around, we can add something to that effect for you guys to review.
Okay, thanks.
And so the next one, which we had a category for them, but it wasn't a very good. It was very confusing when I wrote you guys in that email that we have this thing where it's kind of it could fall into 2 things. We could either say it's prohibited or it's actually allowed as a temporary one, because we didn't have a good clarification for it. So but we do have a feather sign, and we do see this around. And so we just want to be able to identify that, and then be able to discuss about, are those allowed, or are those not allowed. We currently don't allow them technically in our code. Like, our interpretation of code is that they're not allowed, but then our code also, like, there's a very good argument that they would be allowed under a temporary sign. And so we do want to just, this statement right here, the purpose is just to define them at this point. So. And then when we do get into, another couple of notes is that when we do get into talking more about the allowed use of certain things, I do want to bring up, like, are we going, because like during the 4th of July, we see those everywhere, just because it's kind of part of like what happens during a festival, and people see you and that way kind of thing. So are there times when we want to look at having exceptions if we do, you know, so are those appropriate at certain times?
Can we come up with a category of, you know, unique town celebration kind of things and permissive signs of some sort during that time frame.
Right.
Like when you have your 100th birthday or 4th of July and stuff like this, celebration kind of stuff, maybe you can loosen those up and add those, but then immediately afterwards they get
Right.
taken down.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And so the next one is just defining a flag. I don't know if you have any comments up there.
Yeah, I just have one thing, the animated sign, and this is the thing, as I was going through them, like the inflatables, I think, would that be under, would you put that under an animated sign, those kind of things, or is that a whole different kind of thing? I was just looking at, also people wearing sandwich boards. I'm reflecting back on the East Coast where you see people running around doing some pretty wild stuff in these areas.
Yeah, and I do think, it might be good to define inflatables as a separate category, because when we think about animated signs, obviously we do have those ones that were pointed out that they kind of fill with air and they flap around, and that could be animated, but they don't have a
motor or something.
And they don't have any like words or lettering on them, or they a sign, but they're still causing a distraction type of thing. And so I do think that it would probably be best just to make it really clear to call out inflatables and actually have a specific inflatables definition.
That'd be good. Good.
So we can add that, but I do know, I'm trying to think if there's an example. I'm trying to think of, my mind is going to Anchorage, but I know I have seen like signs that are animated and they're moving, or like small videos and that kind of stuff. And so I think that's the intent of the animated signs.
Right. Sometimes like marquee signs, would that be considered an animated sign too? Where they move. It's just the letters going. I don't know if that falls into that, but I would assume.
Yeah, I know that. For instance, like the high school GCI sign, high school sign at GCI, I think that is a certain type of sign that does have some changes, but I don't know if that's necessarily because it will put up like dates and calendar dates that change here and there.
But it's not like an ongoing.
It's not like a movement. It's not like moving. So yeah, I think there is probably a difference there if they just if
I know when that sign was going in, that was the guidance. It could not move and have a whole lot of distraction for people.
Right.
I know that when we were putting stuff up at the American Legion, we put up an initial sign, and we were going to put a running thing that was going on there, which would allow us to advertise what was going on. They said can't do it, so it was just date and time and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yep. So I think it can be lit, but it has to be static.
Yeah.
So. Okay, but yeah, we will bring back some inflatables, some clear language around that. And then continuing to go down, we have, just want to make sure we're not missing anything there. Talk about feather signs. We talked about snipe signs. And so when an off-premises temporary or portable sign illegally placed in the public right-of-way. These may include signs stuck in the ground or affixed to a tree, fence, or utility pole, or any other object. Having lived in downtown Seattle before, you see like those concert things, they're tacked everywhere, and people will just like walk along and find if there's construction stuff boarded out, they'll just tack those up and those types of things. That's usually what I think of when I think of a snipe sign.
Okay.
So.
I wanted to back up to one other thing. What is a point of purchase display? An advertising of a retail item accompanied its display. What would that be?
I can imagine that inside the business.
Yeah, I don't know.
But it's interesting to me that it needs to be defined in our code, but.
Yeah. Because is that like advertising in the window, or for this is on sale for X amount of dollars? Like Safeway sometimes, or maybe not this Safeway, but other Safeways have big windows and stuff like this, and they put stuff out there. I don't know. For me, it's just I just didn't know what that was, so I didn't know what a point of purchase display was.
And I do think, like you said, it's probably something where they have it either in a window or like in a fenced area. For instance, if we have like at Ace has that fenced-in area down there. Where they can put like wheelbarrows and all that kind of stuff, but they could put a sign in there that would say, hey, wheelbarrows for like $12. something like that, and I think that would be considered a point of purchase display.
Yeah, it says a retail item.
Right.
Accompanied display, got it. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Any other, and then we did change made some proposed changes to the term temporary sign. It's just as any sign that's not permanently fixed and intended to be displayed for a short period of time only. And so we kind of, the proposal there was to remove banner, pennant, valence, or advertising, just because there was some tension between signs that weren't allowed and temporary signs being the same thing.
Okay. I have one question on the special event sign of that. It says, it talks about signs
Yep.
that announce civic, cultural, unique, or random event. I don't know, you may be giving yourself a lot of, that random event thing sort of got me, or unique. I don't know, a lot of people might interpret that differently, and
Yeah.
I don't know, we may have to figure out how to tighten that up.
Well, yeah, we'll definitely, we'll come back to you with something, and I'm making a little note here, and
Can you
that
make it-
we'll make so that, because you're right, that could
Anybody could have a random sign out there. of
be
some
someone's
sort.
birthday party and you can put it up, right?
Or maybe it'd say an official special event, but maybe official, maybe, city supported special event as opposed to somebody's neighborhood. I don't know,
Yeah,
but yeah,
yeah, that,
Civic and cultural are good.
yeah,
Then
oh, absolutely.
Unique and random
Sort
aren't
of.
as good. Right? You might have heard it.
Yeah.
right. Yeah, any other thoughts on any definitions, changes that you'd like to see, or questions that you have?
Let's double check here. When it says sign, and this is what Carol was bringing out, was that term upon the site, any device fixed to a painted or incorporated into a building, service block, et cetera, on there, or freestanding upon the site. Does that necessarily mean it has to be upon the site, or just, if you've got authorization to put it anywhere, I guess, how do do you have to put upon the site? Because I think that can give you some leeway, that if because it's just a sign, well, I'm not putting it on that site, I'm putting it just randomly over here, and I don't know if that is, if that's necessarily needed or not.
Which one, what definition was that on?
On sign, page 2 of 13, or page 5, depending upon what you're looking at.
Okay,
Or 6 of 34,
okay.
if you look at the PowerPoint.
So you don't like the words on the site, or?
Yeah, it just seemed like, I guess, maybe the thing is, and maybe how I was looking at it, to me, it begged the question that when you put a sign upon anything, or anywhere where it is, does it mean that's that specific site? Or, do you have to have approval for that site by the city to put it there? Then it would be important. But if people are just putting signs up or something like that, that would be, and because it's just a generic definition of a sign. Does the sign have to be on an approved site,
Right,
as its definition
Right.
implies? I don't know.
Right.
It came to me as just an awkward
Yeah.
thing on there.
because we do have signs that are actually on, you can have a sign that's on a vehicle.
Oh, yeah?
And so, like if you wrapped a car, that's technically a sign, but we don't really look at that. But if you park a car on a piece of property at a certain
Oh.
location, then it becomes a sign.
Oh, good point.
Yeah, with that type of thing. And so we do have, so anyway, just that there is a difference where there are signs that move or are movable. But then if the minute you park it in a place for the intent of advertising, then it becomes a sign on your property. So,
Wow. Because there's a lot of people have those magnet signs and stuff, and...
yeah, we don't care about those. If they're driving around, you got like locksmith and you got your phone number on your
Yeah.
door or whatever, we don't really care about that.
Okay.
So, but that still is technically a sign, and so I think upon the site,
Okay.
that could be looked at being taken out, because we do look at name signs that are not on a site per se.
Didn't even think about the vehicle. Yeah,
Yeah.
good idea.
Yeah.
I would just bring up marquee, right, because we've been talking about awnings. And I'm sure you look closely at this and it looks fine, but maybe make a connection here and zone in on this one, like marquee, parentheses, canopy or awning, and then definition, looks good, kind of long, I'm not going to read it. And then we got marquee sign after, right, a sign that is part of or attached to a marquee. I mean, do you want to have canopy and awning in parentheses after marquee there too? I don't know.
Yeah, I think we should probably clean that up, because I feel like it's one of those language things where you don't use the word in its own definition.
Right. Even by putting it in parentheses, right. By putting it in parentheses, it's like a little, it's like a little, it's there, but I don't know how code goes, but that has like this connotation of like, less important than marquee, it's a little afterthought, canopy or awning. I mean, maybe
Right.
you want awning to be the word, since we're kind of been focusing on that a little bit. Like, what is the most common of those three? Marquee, canopy, or awning? Kind of going with the awning term more lately, right?
Yeah, I think, I would definitely say that in today's language, we use things like awning or canopy.
Marquee seems like that movie thing.
Yeah,
too.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe just getting awning a little more up front.
Yeah, I like that.
Both.
Could they just have slashes between it, with awning being first and then
Yeah.
or canopy or marquee
Right.
Yeah.
inclusive?
Okay.
You know what I mean with parentheses?
Yep.
Like that was something in my writing, like get rid of parentheses, like, cause I do like it, you can kind of like do a little more comment, but I imagine in like even like official language like this.
Yeah,
I mean, it's good, like you see examples, if you go to like freestanding sign, and then examples, parentheses, pole, monument, or ground sign. That's useful, and I do, this is just a little tension in my writing, which is a weird connection to make, but like, I still use parentheses, but I wonder like in code if that's, just parentheses, something to, how much more, it's in the code, so it's
Right.
official, but you know what I mean? There is a
Yeah.
little bit of
Well, parentheses to
there's
me always is
a
sort of.
translation there with the parentheses.
Right, it's also a clarification, it's just like, it's
Yeah,
sort of
yeah, that's
further.
a good word, yeah.
And so is it an official term, or is it just a descriptive?
Right,
Yeah.
So maybe your point taken is, make it a more substantial thing as opposed to being within the parentheses.
Right.
Make it a more permanent part of the definition.
yeah. Notice the, marquee, capitalized, canopy or awning, not.
Yeah. We don't even use the word marquee.
Yeah, I always think
Awning.
about
There's an-
Times Square.
Right.
And those are the marquees, I'm
Correct.
sort of
Sure.
familiar
Right.
with
It
them.
does conjure up a
Yeah.
So I
different
do think
visual.
there's some, probably differentiate, both using the most common term, but then also differentiation, because most of us do not agree that a canopy and a marquee are the same thing per se.
And then, we talking a lot about awning. Is there more to say about those? Like we talked about awning signs, like there's code there and kind of rules. Is this, or, is like marquee sign as it's written here, is that awning sign, the definition, a sign that is part of or attached to an awning? Is that what you would go with, or do you want to say more there? Because aren't there like this kind of certain specifications?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
It's nice to have it just short, okay? That's what it is, but
Yeah,
you need more there.
awning sign.
Yeah, right.
I'm thinking what Fourth Avenue would be if, people put those things down, those would be awnings in front of their stores if that were the kind of thing. No one would really think of those things as marquees necessarily. Maybe if they put wording in front of it, they'd call it, but you'd still call it an awning. The marquee might have been the language and the awning is the thing. They might look at it that way. I don't know, but that's,
Okay, well, we'll have Courtney do some little bit of work there and clean that up.
I think
And
that
we'll
definition is
definitely
good.
bring that back around you and have further discussion on that, for sure.
I think that definition is good though, marquee sign becoming awning sign, because this is just the definition, and then you go to the code to see the specifications on what's allowed with an awning. You don't need that here. This is clear.
because is there anything really different, and this is my ignorance here, is there a difference in structure from a canopy to an awning? Because if maybe we just
Right.
standardize and call them awnings and just not have canopy,
Right.
what we're doing is awnings.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah,
There's
I wonder
minor
that too.
differences.
Oh, there are.
I looked it up and I don't know.
Yeah.
Is it nuanced differences or?
They're pretty nuanced. Awning, it's like it's had something to do with kind of the roof or I guess the roof structure being less durable, or like, an awning can be like one of those ones that just, you fold out, it's just like a tent fabric kind of thing, or it could be a little bit more durable, but it's not
Substantial
like,
than a canopy? Or
no,
vice
it's
versa?
canopy is actually more substantial in the definitions I saw. I had a harder time distinguishing
Huh.
between a canopy and a marquee, but again, it's like they're all very similar. So I think that's why they're all grouped together, because
Yeah.
if I saw any of those, I'd use them interchangeably. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, I think we can almost need to like reverse a little bit where we put maybe like marquee, like as a, like, we want this to be so that if someone's looking in the definitions, they're gonna find what they need
Right.
in that point. And so,
Yeah, awning goes way to the top of the list with the A.
right, awning, and then, or,
I'm
you know,
looking for
something
an
like
awning, I'm
that.
looking for a marquee. No.
And I do think too, then this also gets into the point that we're getting into is when do visuals, not just for, when we're looking at, so when you look at this in your packet on page 413 or 7 or one of the ones. But we do have, when it says like canopy sign, there actually is a picture there that describes that and shows that. And so I do think, and we have never used visuals in our code, but we have found other code that actually has a significant amount of visuals in it, which I do think when it comes to this is helpful.
That's
yeah.
clear, yeah.
And so I do think that we could look at having even under like definitions where it makes sense or can add clarity, we could bring in,
Some of the narrative is very
even with like the
helpful.
measurement standards are great showing that, but I do think even on some of these things, we could even just show what we mean by that.
I like that.
I think it'd be a great idea, because if you take a look at D and the definition of D, a freestanding projecting sign, the sign area shall be computed by the measurement of one of the faces when two displays are joined. I mean, that's pretty technical.
Right.
I mean, I'd like to just have a happy picture there, and I'd be golden
Yes,
with that, you know?
it's hard to
Makes sense.
translate,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
even when
I
I
was trying to
really
wrap my
close
brain
read
around
like hard, it's like, I
Yeah,
can't
it's gonna make
pull
things
it, you
easier.
know,
Yeah.
people can interpret and be like, oh, I didn't know it meant that.
30
Yeah.
degrees.
If you got the picture,
Yeah.
it's harder to make that argument for,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's good because we do have like, we permit signs. I mean, the sign is a permit process that you have to go through, and often they have to be engineered, and so they're also tied in with building. And so I do think that it is good that we have visuals.
Yeah.
So we can,
People are spending money on it, they might as
yeah,
well
we can,
make
and
it
just to
help.
help people out, so
Yeah,
we'll come up with some visuals for some certain definitions. Obviously, like, there's some that we don't need definitions for because it does make sense,
Right.
but,
Yeah, you don't want to clutter it,
but I think where we could have confusion, we'll bring in some visuals and just to kind of see what you guys think of those visuals and go over them.
yeah.
Right.
I mean, projecting sign, suspended sign, that's much easier to just see, like, to describe that would be difficult, and here you have the differences. You got a happy couple walking, holding hands, you know. It's all a little like,
It's just already emitting
right,
joy.
right, you know with writing, you're not, you know, if you're doing a visual there, it's
It
not
just
like.
gives you a warm and
there might
fuzzy
be-
right there.
Right, you can do little things like that that just promote a happy
So
town.
simple.
Right, sure, like, oh man, this is,
No, the visuals are good.
Okay.
You know, thank you for
Yeah,
indulging me on that.
That's huge.
and so as part of that, we will look at, we were just looking at visuals for ways to show measurements or certain things, but I do think we'll go ahead and bring back to you some visuals on signs themselves.
Good, thank you.
To create clarification, so. Anything else on definitions?
If we're back, we have definitions where the pictures are too, are those still considered definitions, or those?
Those are, at that point,
Oh, measurement standards, okay.
measurement standards, so we're looking at,
I'm good with definitions right now.
and we can always come back.
Administration and enforcement.
And we will be sure to add that, the quality control, obviously, of some of these things, so.
So I do have one question, actually, now that, that's administrative enforcement, now, on that section when there, fees shall be set by the resolution of the city council. Is that a major undertaking at this point?
No, we just update our fee schedule.
Okay.
And so that's, they basically have that, it's like a chart that includes all departments. And it's something that we can just update pretty easily, and they update it annually when they change fees for like everything from like short-term rental permit to life safety or like whatever those things are that the city may charge for. They just have a schedule they update all the time, and then we can update that intermittently. But it's nice because it's just a schedule that's part of code, but it sits outside of like a title. So they can just, city council can just update it pretty quickly. And it's not something we have to do these title changes for every time we want to update a fee.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, because it says exceptions and the rest, fees shall be set by resolution. What if, again, it's non-compliance with code? We always seem to have to we can set, you do this, A, B, C, D, what is the non-conformance consequence of that? Because unfortunately, we've seen a lot of that in different areas.
Yep, and I do
I don't
think
know if
that,
there's-
on point B there, it shall be unlawful to change, modify, alter, or otherwise deviate from the terms and conditions of said permit without prior approval. And written record of such approval shall be entered upon. And then, a signed permit shall become null and void if the work for which the permit was issued has not been completed within 6 months.
So let me see, okay.
But before such work, but yeah, it does not, at least right there, there's not,
So it's an either or, either you comply or you take it down.
yeah, but I'm not seeing any like, they have a variance procedure, which is, they have non-conforming ones, obviously, because if something exists and we change code, that allows a non-conformance, but I'm actually not seeing any type of spelled out like consequence necessarily in the code.
Because I've seen some more recently, some really creative looking signs out there that I'm wondering if they've actually done much of anything in terms of requesting, that's whether it's a big sheet with their stuff on it or, things like that. And I'm just like, what's the next move? Everything sounds good when everybody's playing by the same rules, but when they don't, then what do you do?
Yep. Yeah, so I think that we need to, we can look at making sure that it's spelled out as far as compliance.
All right.
We'll make sure that that's, if you don't comply, then this.
It's unfortunate, but in this day and age, it seems like that seems to be a common occurrence.
Unfortunately, we spend a lot of time on that.
Yeah, I know your office does, that's for sure.
But I do think actually even just, I think there's people that, I don't know, they just didn't know.
Oh,
They didn't understand. And so,
totally get it.
and so I think having these pictures and definitions will be much better for that. And then we're always going to be battling the people that just choose to do that. So, yeah. Okay, so going into measurement standards, these are just, Courtney provided these. Like the first one is just kind of looking at like the canopy sign that shows the overall sign area. Just different ways to define a sign area. If it's on the side of a building, you just kind of take the outline. And so we're not really necessarily looking at changing the code here, but that does, do the visuals help, are they helpful in understanding for like sign area and how you measure the height? And even if you go on to page 9 or 6, whichever, how you look at it there, but whatever, it's got the monument sign, and again, we have the happy people, and we have a happy car driving down the street too. But do you guys think that those visuals are helpful for helping people understand? Because you're allowed a certain sign area depending on the frontage of your property. And so, like for instance, like Safeway has, I don't know how many 100 feet of property, and so their sign, they could have this much sign area. And that's how so it's a calculated formula. And then if you, but you can only go up to like, I think we only count like, even if you had like a quarter of a mile, you still only get this much of sign that's allowable. There's a limit to it. And so that's, the sign area is important because it's a calculated formula thing that we have to work through. And so when people do a sign permit, they come to us and they say, hey, this is how big our sign's gonna be, and we've had to say, nope, that's too big. We never had to tell anyone their sign's too small, but but it's always usually, no, you have to actually trim that down quite a bit, and that type of thing. So that's, so helping people understand sign area is a big deal.
I have a question regarding your canopy sign. And I'm guessing you have the calculations on that, how far it comes out from a building and how far it can, that front area drops down. Is there a calculation for that? Because I'd wonder how far can you drop down,
Front, yeah.
from the ground up,
I think you have to be at least 7 feet,
off the ground?
which is, you figure it's higher than a door. And I think that's but it's actually, that gets into building code and right-of-way.
And fire safety.
And fire safety and all that kind of stuff. So
Okay.
Doug can usually quote those off the top of his head. So when we're dealing with, like Mark, we're dealing with canopies over rights-of-ways, I think it's 7 feet, a minimum 7 feet
Okay.
to walk underneath it. And then, yeah, that's,
Okay. I just had one other question is, bear with me on this, on page 10 of 34, I guess, where they have the vehicle and the happy couple and all the rest of that stuff. The monument sign, what is, 20 feet seems really high. A 20-foot sign? I'm
what
wondering,
it
what was
says?
the basis for that? I thought it was inches, but I actually looked into it further, it's 20 feet.
But the people can't be that tall.
Yeah, but I could,
wonder-
yeah, I hope not. But, you
that's
know.
weird. That's interesting. I don't believe it's that tall because that would block the,
And the pole sign says that too, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that, we'll look into those actual numbers there.
Because I think I found it, that's why I said, no, that can't be right. I was thinking 20 inches, oh, it can't be 20 inches, that'd be too short. So,
I mean, you want it to be seriously.
Actually, it says
Yeah.
and then, in
maximum
number,
height of 20 feet. I think the graphic there doesn't match up to the, freestanding signs are subject to the following limitations: a maximum height of 20 feet or the height of the building, whichever is less.
right, that's big.
Yep.
You can have a 20-foot sign, not like 20 feet up, 20 feet, like,
Your whole honking sign.
Well, the thing is too, is that you can't have, like, you couldn't have,
It's almost a
you're limited by square footage,
okay.
right? And so like if you have it 20 feet up, it can be like this. Like for instance, if you look at the signs like Chevron,
Yeah,
the big gas station signs, those are up in the air, they're up, they're higher than so many feet,
yeah.
that type of thing. And so, some of those may have actually been,
So the
put in before our code is, but like, when we're looking at that, that's how we're looking at, you're thinking that's really high, but then you think, oh, actually those gas station signs are pretty big. And so that's what so that would refer to, like, those are the highest ones. I think that this right here, that number and that graphic don't match up. And so that's a
Right.
poor that's a,
You're saying you can't go 20 feet all the way to the ground sign. There's an area to the sign.
Correct.
You can have it 20 feet up in the air, but then it has to fit the area.
correct.
Because the monument sign says
Okay.
20 feet too, because if a monument's parked on the ground.
Yeah, yeah,
it's up. So
yeah, that
may-
doesn't, yeah, I think these graphics maybe just don't match up, but we do, like, I think it's more of an example of a monument sign, but yeah, we'll make corrections because those are confusing.
I hate to think somebody just thinks they can put a 20-foot monument sign.
Right, that's a big sign.
It's a very big one.
I mean,
Right.
There's a way, I mean, it's just funny, like, and, tiny little writing. What does that say? 20
Yeah.
feet? Because you look at it, it's like, okay, it can only be shoulder length high.
Yeah, that's what you just assume.
So then you
Yeah.
say, well, it can be 20 feet, but like people just glance at you like, well, it can only be shoulder length high. So you kind of almost suggest that, hey, you're not gonna,
Yeah.
I like these little visual cues. I think you can really.
Yeah, we just have to get
Somebody can read between the lines on those and say,
Yeah.
well, your book says, your code says, right there, they can read between the lines if they want.
Right.
And I think, actually, the projecting signs, even though I think Doug's thing is 7 feet, but our code says 8 feet, even though I think that's the one that, as far as we go with the more restrictive, which would be ours in that case. But yeah, so it's 8 feet.
Gotcha.
But yeah, we will take care of that, so that way it matches up.
I noticed anecdotally, like getting this packet, I started looking at signs a little more and around town as I drove a little bit, not extensively, but a bit. And I don't know, nothing came up to me. Like, and I'm like a new eye at this type of stuff, but I was like, I think we're doing good on signs.
For the most part.
Yeah. And if you go to page 12 or 9 of 13, or whichever one that is, but when we do get into temporary signs, that's kind of another thing that shows some examples.
There was one thing I noticed here too that Carol had put on there, and I didn't even think about that, is no rooftop signs. I mean, obviously you have the view shed limit of 34 feet for anything there, but somebody could probably have something there and put something, on the top of their building.
Like for a plane to see.
I thought I saw
Or
somewhere it
just
said you couldn't
pointing
have
down,
Oh, I
or,
see.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
do
sort
have,
of
like we do define them, but
Yeah,
I
you
don't, but we
showcase
can't
lounge.
have it on there.
Yeah, Showcase Lounge, I think, was sort of that way. Isn't that high, Showcase?
Yeah,
On the roof.
I think that they got,
I guess up above.
I believe, I want to say they got a variance.
Or they just
Or,
left their-
or because what it is that
leave it there forever.
they left the outline, the frame of that because it is historic.
Yeah.
And they left that outline frame, they were allowed to go ahead and fix part of it, but they were allowed to keep that the frame piece, because they didn't actually change the frames, and they had the structure and all that stuff in there, so I think even though I don't think that you could not apply for a new permit and get that
Oh,
same
no,
setup.
that's what I was sort of thinking, that's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
historic, if
Yeah,
nothing
yeah,
else,
yeah,
totally
right.
historic.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So, but yeah, if you have a bunch of, playing devil's advocate, somebody
Yeah.
buys a bunch of stuff and they start throwing stuff off the rooftop, or not throwing,
Yeah.
but, putting stuff on the rooftop and, with lights and all the rest of that stuff, it sort of detracts from the, the town's,
Yeah.
image and such.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But the rooftop was just sort of, I had not even thought about that.
yeah. And one of the things I did want to make a note on this, number 6 on that page 12 or 9, is that a discussion that we had is that right there for forever, right there by the lagoon, people have just kind of put up signs like whoever wants to, whenever they want to.
They're not really supposed to.
They're
yeah.
not supposed to.
Yeah.
And there is actually a little placard there that says, please get,
Permit?
please get city manager approval, but no one does. So but we are like being, so any temporary sign post on city property does require approval by the city manager, including there. And so,
Is
and
that park-
it is a great place to put signs, and it's a great place to advertise, and it's important, but we just want to make sure that the city manager has approval of like what's
Sure.
going to go up there. Most of the stuff is great, but also every once in a while something goes up there, you're like, That's not- that's weird.
Process there, yeah.
yeah.
But is that a park and isn't there limits to parks? You can't put stuff in parks?
Yeah, so that's that's
Or
one.
is the banner, or is the wood fence not the park?
I don't really know what the bounds are per se, but for that, they just kind of try to make it in general.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, just, it's a community spot that is pretty helpful at times.
Oh, sure.
And so I think they're willing to kind of look at that as a location, not even unlike when we put, like vote here signs outside. That's on
Yeah.
a city property, it's vote, we have a good reason to put up a temporary sign for that type of thing.
Or across the street, there's been no signs crossing that fence right
Mhm.
across the street there.
Yeah, so. Yeah, so I think on the temporary signs, it does show like banners, like we have political signs, and so on commercial, just on commercial properties, we allow, it's pretty easy to remember that you can do a 4x8, like it's a sheet of plywood, that's how big the sign can be, 32 square feet basically. But on properties, on residential properties, you can't put up something that big, you can only kind of do those smaller, I think it's can't remember the dimension, they're kind of a standard dimension, but it's 12 square feet. And so we always, during political season, we always have to just remind people of that one here and there.
The temporary signs too, it says not more than 30 days in a 180 period.
Carol had a
Which is-
good mark on that.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny though, it's like, so how am I going to define my 180-day period?
Right.
Yeah.
When I wrote you guys that letter, I said, that's the challenge, is like, so if someone decides to take January to June as their 180-day period, and July to December is their next 80-day period, they now have 60 days to display the sign. If they're open 5 days a week, that gives them 12 weeks to have their sign posted up.
Right.
And it's like, and we don't want to be the people who be like, Selena, would you go count out who's got the...
You say
You know,
$10
and so,
an hour.
I understand like that temporary sign thing, like we need to define temporary, but that one is really kind of sticky because it's like there's no way we can actually
No,
track that, and no way we want to track it.
right. So change it to something you can track.
But I don't even want to track it. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Just a
but-
legal sign.
but just because it's like we get, if someone's being flagrant about something, but if someone's trying to use something appropriate, and they like, I'm not going to be on there if they went over 31, if they went over 30
Right.
days. But I would say that is a spot that we may need to pay attention to a little bit more to look at. It's just a weird thing that there's no way we can track that.
No, people
And,
just need to police their stuff. I
and
don't
it's
know.
so variable that how you could use that. You know, I mean, you could literally, if you did it a few days a month, you could just keep your sign, I mean, you could have your sign up year round.
But is that done? Like when you put a sign up, you take it down and, I mean, is that, don't you just put a sign up and it's up, or no?
No, I mean, if it's a
Not
temporary,
temporary
if it's a temporary sign, you could like,
I don't know.
you could
Oh,
take it
right.
down every other day,
Yeah,
and
it's
technically
Or
like,
even just seasonally, right? Like,
You'd only want
Yeah.
it for.
right,
time
or
of year,
during
I
business
guess.
hours or something.
Yeah, you put out a
Yeah.
sandwich board when we're
Yeah,
out
that's
there.
right, sandwich
Yeah.
board is a good example,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
So there's-
totally,
Right, 6 days a week.
right.
and it's funny too, a lot of these sign issues, we only have these sign issues like 3 or 4 months out of the year. And then then there is no issue. I know, it is.
You know, you write it for the season, you know, or just like,
And, yeah, and,
That might make it easier.
you just start writing it toward like summer.
you know, and I think, you know, that there would be like, I don't want to create more work for ourselves, but there could be a way of like, we're doing a lot of our forms online now, like OpenGov, but, you know, one of the ways we could look at, discuss, I just wouldn't want something to create more work for my department, would be like a temporary sign permit, that people would actually have to do that, but then that's just one more thing we'd have to try and like track down, which just get
Sign
weird.
Yeah, oh, cool.
So, but,
Just something that's like sensible and you know, you assume the public, hey, this is a good deal, I'll just follow it, you know, I'm able to advertise my business. And of course, people are gonna look for a little more, but if it's just like, you know, I don't know, maybe that's the sweet spot you want. I'm not really describing that well, but you know what I mean? Like, someone reads the code, they wanna put out a sign, yeah, that sounds fair, okay, and then they kind of remember, okay, I gotta take it down. If they're like ballpark taking it down,
Right.
it's not gonna be an issue.
yeah,
Yeah. Also
It's just
true.
me talking offhand, there could be, you know?
Yeah.
yeah,
But I think too, because if it's out there in the elements a lot, it's
Yeah.
gonna get beat up anyway, and I think we still have to, we'll establish a standard of,
Yeah, that's a good-
presentation then if it's
Right.
there and it's starting to yellow,
Yeah.
you know?
right, it's
Or
not,
bleach
not,
out
not
completely.
readable.
Yeah, bleach out completely. What about the signs that, and this is you know, it's really super temporary, you know, when people, like you'd mentioned the stuff about putting it on stop signs, you know, rummage sale signs, yard
Garage
sale
sale,
signs,
yeah.
all
Those
those.
are snipe signs.
Yeah,
They're not allowed,
and you really, no.
yeah.
But it's, again, it's one of those things, it's, we are not gonna go like, track down,
Right.
like, I'm gonna go to this garage sale and let them know it's
Yeah.
there.
Right.
Dog.
A couple
I'm just gonna throw all their signs right on the ground for them. But, yeah, I mean, so technically that's a snipe sign. At the same time too, I think it's something that it's tough because it's something that we've done since, I mean, I've seen those, I mean, since the beginning of a garage sale, people put up cardboard signs.
Right.
And that's how people find garage sales.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
And that's like a community event, that's really
all
cool.
over the country. or
Right,
beyond.
and so it is a snipe sign, and so I do think, technically it's a snipe sign, but it's, the thing that bothers me about that stuff.
They don't take it
is
down.
that-
They don't.
Yeah, when people,
Right.
when they go up and then they're gone,
Right,
and you don't really ever notice them, that's fantastic.
Right.
But then you see something like, that was 2 weeks ago, and
Yeah,
that
that's
sign's still
gone,
sitting on
yeah.
there, like,
Yeah,
you
that's
at least
the
be
issue.
decent and take down your sign.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's like
like-
political signs.
Well, we do have it in there that 10 days after the date, it should
Right.
be taken down.
Right.
So again, I don't know how you enforce that, but
No.
Yeah,
let the
But a
people
snipe
know.
sign shouldn't even be up there to begin, yeah.
but,
It's
yeah,
nice
but,
and kid to rip
Have
all
some
this stuff out.
respect.
yeah, yeah, so, I mean, like, if someone was pasting up with, like, the old, on this building over here, like pasting up signs on the side of
Right.
City Hall, that's a snipe sign we would definitely go after, but like,
Yeah.
we're not gonna go after like a
Rummage sale.
rummage sale.
Right, right. Post no bills.
Right.
Oh, yeah? Oh, I never heard that one. Or else you have to pay some neighborhood kid that, you know, it'd be a nice little job for a kid to go and you pay him, you know, how many cents per hour or, you know, $1 per sign and to bring to you, that's, that's out of date.
So we did define feather signs, if we're going on to page 10 and 13, we talked about prohibited signs, and so we add, we define those things except other than the ones that are allowed for temporary ones, but we did define feather signs in there as a prohibited sign. Temporary signs relating to civic events.
Except barber poles.
I think we have some non-conforming signs, some variance procedures, but I think that's kind of,
I mean, is there a theme, you don't have to answer this, you know, there are themes like sign issues that you could come across for you, like this is kind of an issue with signs when this occurs?
I think that, one is we have people that don't get permits,
Yeah.
and, but I would say it's not really like, most people I think are pretty good about getting permits, and most people understand that every once in a while one will go up,
Yeah.
and, you'd be like, hey,
You need a permit.
yeah, and so I know that we have actually like gone and like walked them retroactively through the process, like you have this sign, you're supposed to get a permit.
And they'll get it.
And yeah, so most of the time people didn't know, and so
Yeah.
they'll get it and they'll walk them through that process. But I'd say the biggest ones were like the feather signs that we've had to go and have them take them down. But again, I think that there's some signs when they might be like a little more appropriate times, and they might be a little more appropriate, like during the 4th of July festival, or like Silver Salmon Derby.
Right.
Or even like certain holidays, I think you could, you know, like,
Christmas
I'm not
and
gonna
stuff,
like,
you know?
like, yeah, I mean, maybe it's Christmas, 4th of July, if you had some like sign, you know, something like that. Just, there's certain celebrations that I think that's not necessary, that's not an inappropriate time to use something like that.
Yeah.
That's not normally,
Right.
Civic special events,
Yeah.
that can, you widen the permissions.
yeah, right.
Built-in temporary, you know,
Yeah.
it's gonna be over.
Yeah, and because we don't want, like, I think we've all driven down those areas of certain cities when you're driving down and it's like used car alley and those things are like as far as the eye can see. And that's just not what we want.
Right, the flags flapping, yeah.
Yeah, our town to look like is have those things sticking up everywhere, you know,
Yeah,
so,
but then, you know, you got like festivals that, you know, look really nice downtown on like the main downtown street lamp poles with like a nice,
right.
there's festivals going on.
Yeah, or if like Stewart Music and Arts Festival or something like that,
Yeah,
if they were
yeah.
downtown when they were downtown that time. You know, I mean, there's certain
Yeah.
things that you can, that I think are,
I think
Nice
It's more
More appropriate.
decorative than
Yeah.
anything else, and
Yeah.
it just enhances the festivities.
Right,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So the special times, special events.
Okay.
It's always gonna be 4th of July.
Yeah.
And then one other item that we did want to bring up with those flag signs is that we do, there's one time we thought about, or one group of people, but we do have mobile vendors that have like little kind of kiosk type businesses. Like there's Harbor, there's different places, and we have heard from them that they're like, this has actually helped people kind of help see us and find us, because we don't get a street sign. We don't get, because most of them are operating out of like a food truck or a trailer. And so anyway, that would be something to discuss or think about. And then again, we're going to be bringing this back to you, and we can either bring it back to you in another work session and we have it all cleaned up, or add those things and you guys can go over them again, but we can bring something back to you then, or we can at least discuss it at that point of like, are there exceptions for user groups to that?
Yeah.
So. Okay, anything else on signs?
Not right now, I think we're good.
Okay. Good, well, thank you, I appreciate all that feedback, and I think it was a good discussion, and like the direction our code's gonna be going, I think it'll be very helpful. So the next topic, it says discuss, which is something we've discussed before, and it's kind of come around a few times, but it says discuss reducing square footage requirements for multifamily dwellings in commercial districts and the effects it could have on future development. And I think the reason why we're even discussing this is just because the basis of this is kind of a land use issue and housing. And with our comprehensive plan, it says that we're supposed to provide, enable ways to provide housing for different groups, that type of thing. And so that's kind of I guess the motivation behind it, to have this discussion. And so the kind of the question is this the way we can or want to help address part of the housing problem? Because sometimes you can change things that might not make a difference, and other times you can, and maybe it will. So if you go back into your packet, it's actually on page 21 that I want to, it's under section E, where it says multifamily developments except studio apartments with 3 or more units require a minimum of 9,000 square foot in said districts, and 20,000 square feet in the resource management district. And all the districts require additional 1,200 square foot per unit of 5 or more units. And so, for instance, if you have 9,000 square feet, then if you went to a 5th unit, then you'd need 10.2. If you went to a 6th unit, you'd need 11.4. And so you just keep adding 12 on for each additional unit. So that's kind of, I guess, the main language that we're, not the only, but kind of the main that we're addressing here. So, and Courtney just provided some resources that are out there on page 23, where it's got the missing middle housing. And so they kind of they show that spectrum of detached single-family homes. Then we have duplex side-by-sides and duplex stacked. We have fourplex stacked courtyard buildings, cottage courts, townhouses, multiplex medium, triplex stacked live work, mid-rise. And I realize that some of these aren't really fit for Seward, but tend to be kind of more of a urban setting. But it does kind of show us the types that are often needed and missing in different communities. And then the multifamily dwelling concept number 1 is one of it too. Is that sometimes it's hard for us to see what it could look like. And so the first one is 4 stories and it's 12 units. And if you look at the plans, they have adequate parking, but it does fit 12 units in a fairly tight footprint.
So these are all in good weather.
Yeah, that's the thing we're really noticing about this. That place is sunny.
Because a lot of those are up in Anchorage too, these similar kind of things in a variety of areas, and it's, and just on the outset, Alaskans have a lot more cars. I mean, and I'd be concerned about the parking.
Yes. And so that's always and I think even too, we have special issues like 4 months a year here, right? When it comes to parking that are really hard. Parking can be always challenging, but I think it gets even harder, so we need to be aware of that it gets even worse.
Well, I do like the under the under the building parking, because that helps alleviate some of it, because it is, if you're tightening up or alleviating that additional 1,200 feet after every 4, units or, and you alleviate that, we still have to worry about where we're going to put all those vehicles. But if you have something that you put up and you have, people that park underneath it, that sort of reduces a little bit of pressure on the street.
Right. And that's it's no longer going to happen there, but that's the arcade lot.
Yeah, I remember that
was down there where they had parking underneath and had the apartments, and that was kind of a cool concept. And so, but yeah, I think just sometimes it's good to see what other people do, and I mean, at least it's helpful for me to look at concepts and be like, oh, that's actually, they can fit quite a bit in that smaller lot, and they do account for plenty of parking. And so you can see the footprint on the 10,300 square foot lot, and then there's another one could convert from 15 studios to 6 or 7 plex. But anyway, those are just kind of examples. That one doesn't have parking, which doesn't address that issue, but it does kind of show different ways of building things out. And actually the one where it says, this one that looks like this right here.
Okay.
It's interesting too that we saw the tentative plans for the Terry's Tires properties before that was converted, and it was actually very similar plan to that they were looking at doing, where it was going to be condos that were kind of built that way, so they had parking and garages, and then it was 2 above that way. So, but anyway, we just wanted to introduce some concepts to you, and then on that last page there, Courtney did show kind of like there's a footprint. It shows about 9,000 square feet is just down over here. It's the UAF lot, I believe. oh no, maybe it's the one that's just down from there, but, so,
I think this would be a little bit more, because the problem with these is, when you look at them like, oh my gosh, you wouldn't want to put that thing in Seward. I mean, if you could have the same footprint, so to speak, or same kind of thing, but have something that looks a little bit more old school Sewardish, because I used to, I looked at, back east, because East Coast coastal towns and stuff like this, and they have old stuff. And I won't quote, because New York was terrible, but Massachusetts and the upper part of New England and things like this did a phenomenally good job on, I think they called them like, they were stacked, three levels, not quite the brownstones, but something similar to that, in the sense of, you could tighten it up a little bit, they were nice places to live. The only thing you'd have to do is figure out how to put the vehicles underneath it a little bit easier,
right, yeah.
But they're a lot prettier looking than what these are, because these are very, garish and modern and not Seward.
Right, no, I totally agree, I think, yeah, I totally agree, I think if someone were to do something like that, we would, you want it to look so that it fits in and doesn't stick out
Yeah,
like
it doesn't fit the historic downtown.
No, no. No, it doesn't, and doesn't fit anywhere, really, like.
Maybe
you don't-
Anchorage.
Yeah, maybe,
Yeah, I
I
see
mean,
anchors.
Yeah. Sockeye Inn
so
looks like that.
I can't see this one that I'm looking at being stucco either. That's what we're talking about, right? For Seward, stucco?
If you could do stucco or some of the other kind of stuff, and it's, we need Stucco Johnson again, who came and
Exactly.
did everybody's house.
Right.
Yeah, I do know somebody who can do stucco, though.
I mean,
Talk
that
to you
is,
later.
that is the look. I think
Yeah.
that's part of the look here.
Yeah.
I dig it.
For sure.
I don't know how.
I think a lot of Millionaires Row up there was
Yeah.
stucco, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just wanted to show you guys that as we're looking at that. The thing that's, I think, a challenge is that we actually don't have that many parcels that have 9,000 square feet or more. We do have a few. There's down there, I mean, like I think the Ray Building is still for sale. Like, yeah, that's a fairly large
That's
parcel.
big. I didn't know what you said.
I don't think it's for sale.
It's not for sale? I think there were one time they were looking at
Oh, the
getting
Ray Building.
the Ray Building property.
It won't be just for lease.
And so I know at one time they were looking at doing something. I know the Orca Building is for sale. But yeah, I mean, you look at, like, that's actually the Ray Building property is the biggest property that we have in town. That's not fully, like, developed. I think it's the total of it's like 7 acres or something like that.
It's
5
pretty
acres.
big.
It's big.
It's huge.
It's all a community garden.
Yeah. But outside of that, we don't have,
Unless that land where that other place I was going with, Mr. Protzman was gonna have the thing down there, if somebody went back in with the same concept.
Yeah.
Or similar.
yeah, that would be a place too that I think,
It would be smaller, obviously.
it would be smaller, but it would be, and I think you could actually probably get everything. Yeah, it'd be smaller in there where you could get it, and if you did it properly, you could probably do it, well. Again, you'd want to make it look like the original. I think it'd be best if it looked like the original arcade building when it was actually, if you see pictures when it was like 3
Yeah.
stories.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful
It's
building.
huge.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
I think I don't think it would meet the 34-foot building height, though.
No, the original arcade building was definitely taller than, I think it was probably like 40 to 45.
Yeah.
Historic variance.
Right.
There you go. He's
Right.
thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
But we don't really have a lot of, I mean, there are some properties to do that, but it's just, this is for you guys to kind of decide if this is something you want to look at further on.
So what is the change? So we're only dealing with 9,000 square foot properties or more. And it would,
Yeah, so basically right now, if you have a 9,000 square foot property, you can only put up to 4 units on it in a multifamily dwelling.
okay.
So if you take like 90 by 100, that's 3 like downtown, that's 3 like Old Town city lots.
Okay.
So the most you can put on there is 4. So basically what this would do is this would allow you to put like 5 or 6 or some other type of, if you were to open that up, that's what it would allow you to do. And that's just one example,
Yeah.
but it would allow you to take a 90 by 100, and if you could, you'd have to still obviously fit like parking.
Right.
But is that a reasonable thing? Could that be done decently and tastefully by putting like a 6-plex on a 90 by 100 or a 5-plex?
9,100 is the small town lots, right?
Well, that's the minimum requirement. Now,
Okay.
the small town lots are 30 by, small town lots are 30 by 100, this would be 3 of those.
Gotcha, okay.
And so, for instance, if we look at kind of how some of those are scaled, could you do like a parking garage, or like that parking garage type concept, where you can pull in down below, or you have like a garage carport, and then everything is 2 stories above? You could probably still make that, and could you fit, tastefully fit more than 4 units in that space? That's kind of the question, really. So,
I mean, if you wind up developing it as, you can do almost anything if you have the correct facade on the outside of the building and make it look a certain way. But I don't know if I'd want to do a carport necessarily, because that looks very, too modern. I don't think that would do well for here in some ways. I think if you had something that looked old, had the older look, and you could, put some sort of garage structure or something on the front with, the appropriate ornament kind of stuff around it, the old stucco stuff that they did from back in the day, it would look probably pretty nice, and then you wouldn't be challenged with as much that same parking issue, because it all boils down to parking.
yes, it does.
Parking in the summer? Or
I think parking always.
Always, and then you have winter on
People
top of
living
it.
there, yeah.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. What we do is our parking turns into snow storage in the wintertime.
Right.
I mean, you look at like even the alleyways, they get totally piled up in the end, and
Yeah, they can't
so whether if it's not parking, it's snow storage a little bit. But I think it works that we require parking because it ends up filling for snow storage. And then the other thing I'm hearing is that it could be done. You could have the same concept. It could be done poorly, and it could be done well, depending on the look of it and if it fit.
Well, if somebody came in for something like that, say we went forward with that, because again, with just very few left of, the square footage on that. I mean, there's individual pieces of land here that I know that different people, have. They could sell parts of their land off, I guess, if they wanted to do that. It might meet that criteria, but, you just don't have enough. I mean, we're talking onesies and twosies. It's not a whole lot of land, I don't think, that has that would meet that criteria. Would say 9,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
And that.
Yeah, I think like I said, I think that there's a UAF lot that's down here, that big open space. UAF owns it. University of Alaska Fairbanks owns this between just north of the Best
Oh,
Western.
Harvard.
I thought that was their parking lot because they.
No, that's the one that's over here. That's actually another one. That's actually a great example of a property like that. So anyway, this is Best
Yeah.
Western parking up here.
Yeah, right up the hill here.
Right up
Yeah.
the hill here. They have that, which is a whole other issue.
It's a
we
great,
can talk
great
about.
piece of land.
And that's never used.
Yeah,
That's over 9,000, so this is where we could picture.
So that's actually the great place where you could
put
picture
something
that.
there.
Right,
Yeah. Could you fit it there appropriately?
right,
Could you fit something that is a multiplex there
right.
and do it?
But you've got to take a look at, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I got the thoughts.
Sorry.
I was just gonna say, this is how, tasteful, I like this term, it's gonna fit, it's gonna be tasteful. How confident can we, or not me, but people be in okay, here's the plan, here are the drawings, it's tasteful, but then you build it, so does it translate, does the blueprint translate to, tasteful is up to taste? You know what I mean? Like you approve something to build, and then you build it, it's oh, actually, as we see it here, this is not working, so some people might think it does, but then something, the majority might be ooh, whoops. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think, we do have conditional use permits from multifamily dwellings, so that you could put conditions.
Stipulations, yeah.
Stipulations on that
Kind of
building.
guide it, yeah.
Yeah, and so you could put stipulations on that, you don't want some postmodern Miami Vice looking.
Yeah, you don't want that. I mean, the colors might work, I don't know, but Michael's is pink and.
You always see everything's all squared and
Yeah.
ultra angular and.
A couple of those things that were in there, I was ooh.
Yeah, some of it was
Yeah.
just some of that, so, but I think that could be done through a conditional use permit where you require,
Right.
you're probably gonna be seeing plans, but they know in advance that that's kind of going to be a condition, is that it be, certain things be done with it.
I mean, I imagine the plan does translate, you know, like it looks good on paper, it looks good in real world.
And somebody does enough research on, what old Seward looks like too.
Yeah.
At the library, there's plenty of examples of older
Right.
buildings and structures and things like this.
Yeah.
If somebody was truly interested in, maintaining, because I don't think putting any sort of thing in here that doesn't fit it doesn't fit that goal, because that's part of our comprehensive plan and everything else to keep the small town historical look at the place.
Right.
And it wouldn't make it off the dais here.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, and if people could even do like a 4,000, like a 4-unit in a 9,000, which is completely allowable right now, and have it done poorly,
Right.
and so, but that's the question is, could you feasibly fit more on that footprint?
Yeah.
I think with that garage structure, or however you want to put it, I think that may make it a lot easier. But,
The other thing I worry about is like storage, because we all have a lot of toys and things, and then that gets, if snow has covered that, you don't have space for your bicycles or what have you. And then landscaping that we know on CUPs that are out there did not happen, and it could start to look very industrious. More than we might prefer.
I mean, there is a little of that look.
Yeah, I know, and I know we're gonna do that,
Yeah.
Right.
but for it to not continue in
Yeah.
future
Right.
buildings.
And that's the
I
other
think
thing
those
is,
are considerations too.
the consequences of non-compliance with
Besides parking.
CUPs.
Yeah, and we are obviously that's something we're gonna be reviewing CUPs, and then also I think we need to look at code revisions
Gotcha.
to put teeth, and then, so,
But those buildings, that the landscape, what they add units, which we do want. So there's this tension of keeping the old school sewer, but,
Right.
and we do want to add some units. I mean, I don't know.
I think you wanna add units that are like,
Housing.
that are tasteful.
Yeah.
Right.
But I want you to have some bushes, right?
Right.
To look nice.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think
Yeah.
it can be done, and so I think you can have units that create housing opportunities for lots of different people.
Right.
Yeah, that
Single-family
middle-
homes are not for everybody, not everyone can afford single-family
Right.
homes. Some people like to not mow yards. And some people like to be a little bit more efficiency, where you don't allow tiny homes, but if you had a small complex with other people, that still develops that same type of efficiency that some people are looking for. So,
I think that's a good transition, that middle, I don't know if you want to call it, what do they call it, the missing middle?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so important, because, not everybody just moves out from mom and dad, gets married, all of a sudden get to a, $500,000 home. That's where the growth process goes.
Right.
Yeah.
right.
I had a couple things I want to say about this. Has anybody ever heard of form-based codes? Am I familiar? This is something I just started researching the other day, but it sounds like it might check a lot of the boxes of what we're talking about, like development, making something look classy.
What is it exactly?
It's kind of, just restrictions on, I know, when I first saw it, it's like, oh, that sounds overly restrictive, but, it kind of puts, kind of what you're saying, like, it kind of gotta look like something like this when you build it. I'm doing kind of a bad example of explaining it, but I want to do more research on it, but,
And it's called form-based code?
form-based code, that's how I read about it. I can share something or send it out to
Yeah,
everybody if
okay.
I find that article again.
Yeah.
And then, so back to the 9,000 square foot thing, it seems kind of like the 9,000 square foot said, we're just like, okay, well, you need this much space, but we're not really saying how you have to use it, which is kind of the core of the issue, I guess, but we are kind of saying you have to use it, we require this much for parking, but maybe we should say, in addition, if we require this much for parking, we require this much for storage, or this much for green space, and that, and if we limited it to 9,000 square foot, then we had all these other little things, then it could fit whatever area it fits in. If it meets all those requirements, then the total square foot of the property doesn't matter. If we figured out what the actual requirements were that
Those would
we
be
wanted to send
percentages
it.
Percentage, probably.
Yeah.
That can translate to a builder to do that?
I suppose, I mean,
I don't know,
we
yeah.
have the parking, I'll just go to the parking one right now, right? It says, what is it? Yeah, it gives you at a certain size, you have to have another spot, another spot.
Right.
And that's, I'm just saying, so at a certain size, you have to have this much area set aside for this and this much area set aside for that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that might be a way to
yeah,
get
that's
around
good.
it.
Yeah. So you're making good use of the land by putting other requirements, so you can maybe get more in as far as structures per size, but then also too, you're ensuring that you're getting like your green space and your,
Storage and stuff like that.
Storage.
So you build, that's a requirement to factor into the actual building of the units themselves, so it's not an afterthought.
yeah.
And they're hanging the bikes from the ceiling or
Right,
whatever.
yeah, that'd be part of the plan that you see, that'll be another thing you could go through and it's like, oh yeah, it has a required number of this, for that
Makes
size.
sense.
Yeah.
That's good.
Especially in this town.
Property
those-
owners probably.
Yeah.
Because the 34 thing, the height, that's, we're not looking at that. That's, besides the arcade variance, that's kind of like
It's
against the mountain, maybe.
Well,
like, doesn't
yeah,
have to be,
we
but-
have talked about that, and I know that it's really interesting that, I mean, it's something that we do need to discuss at some point in time, because, and kind of do a thorough vetting, is that having a uniform roof maximum does not really make sense in general. I think there's certain areas we would be like, for sure, we're not gonna go over that. But, like, the terminal is looking at getting a variance on the new terminal over there. And it's like, they're gonna probably have a really pretty building over there. And are we really worried about them being at 34 feet over there? Does that really make sense?
Yeah, no.
Probably not.
Go big.
I mean, we also don't want a skyscraper in the middle of that, so, but I do think, so anyway, I do think it's worth a discussion of, and 34 feet does not, like, the more we researched it too, we started looking in, and that's not kind of like a standard height variant, like, when you're looking at like, do we want 3 floors maximum or 2 floors maximum?
Right.
And that's really what you base on, and 34 feet is not, doesn't make sense, and actually really makes it hard for people to do 3 floors.
Gotcha.
And they have to do special engineering around it. And so it would be a conversation to be like, if really like does 36 feet make more sense? We're only going up like this. In certain areas, would it be better to just say, hey, 36 feet is actually the more comfortable and easy and cheap
Gets you to the third
to
floor.
get you to 3 stories. And so anyway, I think it's worth a conversation to say, like, we want to make sure that we're not ruining our view shed,
Yeah.
but we also want to look at like, because I don't really think 34, that like, if, I'm just throwing 36 out there, but I know it was a little bit above 34, but let's say it's 36. Is that really making a massive difference? But it's going to be able to make things that they can build way more cheaply, because they're not having to do this weird engineering about cramming stuff between floors and that kind of thing. And then are there areas where like, are we not so concerned about, like the
View shed.
the view shed, either like up against there, like if let's say the hospital wants to go up a couple of floors, they're not really,
Right.
that might be an appropriate area to go up more than 34 feet. So anyway, just putting those things out there to say, I think it's worth a discussion to have. We do want to protect our view sheds, and we do want this to remain small town. The feel, but again, the arcade building was probably like, it was a beautiful building, but it had to be.
I think it was
you
like 5
see-
stories or
Yeah,
something
you see
huge.
pictures on the downhill side, the far side, and there's like a little car sitting there, and you're like, that is way over 34 feet.
Yeah.
And so,
And like a big spot to like block the view of the bay.
yeah, and also too, I think I've given some of you guys this, but the Park Service will give us these, and I think I gave them to some of you guys, but they do have those
It's a great book,
Those-
the
those
Park
historic-
Service book on Seward, Old Seward.
Old
stuff.
Seward,
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
we can get those for you if you need more copies, but it's great too, because you can actually look through and see some of those old buildings, and I think
Yeah,
that gives
too.
us a good idea of like
The
what we want
architecture.
things, architecture, and what we want things
Yeah.
to look like that way.
I mean, were there some of these multifamily, like, apartment kind of, like, are there examples? I like this idea of just rebuilding, a historic type of building, or like, we had a unit like this, let's go for that, That'd be worth looking into.
Yeah.
Also,
I mean,
too, you look at
probably wasn't a need for it.
old Juneau, because we have, there's land up, private land up on, not in the way of the race or anything else like this, but up on Mount Marathon, or that part of those areas where people built up on the mountains, and Juneau has historic homes up the mountain, so that might even be land that would be available, whether or not you build something 34 feet or taller, but,
Right.
because you're not, if you're right up against the mountain, you're not worried about the view up the mountain. You want to look that way to be able to see.
Right, right, yeah, yeah. So I do think that, anyway, to answer your question, but it all kind of ties into those, though, too. It's like,
Right.
you know, if we did get 36 feet, does that all of a sudden make like a concept, like with the, what you said, the form-based codes, like does adding 2 feet all of a sudden make this a really doable concept type of
Right,
thing?
right.
So,
Should we talk to a builder about stuff like this? I have no clue about that stuff. Would that be a builder kind of question to say what makes it easier? You know, it's 34 feet.
36, thank you, you know.
Right.
No.
Might be,
Maybe we
but-
shouldn't do that.
Well,
let's go 40.
we have heard that 34 feet is a challenge to do 3.
But we have 3, you know, like up the hotels and, you know, right?
Yeah, but
so
also too, like, some of these structures were built
Way back,
before or they disregarded.
right.
Well, like the Breeze Inn, they use an interior, it's not the roof peak. It
Right.
doesn't have to be 34 feet. It's some calculation they use inside the trusses, inside the
Yeah,
building.
yeah, so
to
it is
determine that.
it's not the peak, it's actually like they do, like, if, for instance, if you just have a typical like roof like this, they use the middle of, they basically split that distance in half, and that's your
Right.
thing.
Okay.
Well, Breeze
So
Inn-
it's just different ways.
Yeah, also the Best Western did that too, because they have, since it goes uphill a little bit like this, they have, I think, 3
They-
floors facing the water.
Right.
And then it goes up, and it's not 3 floors, however.
And they're an advantage because
Yeah.
our code says that you can use the high side of you use your highest ground point to
Yeah.
measure from.
To measure
And so
from.
people that have like they have an advantage obviously because they're tilted, and so
downhill.
they can get they can get
Yeah.
the far side way up.
Yep,
But then it's like the people who are on flat land, it gives them kind of a disadvantage. So.
yes, it does.
Because they can still build high because you can actually just run like basically a basement into the ground and you can get all the floors you want that way if you're working on that hillside concept.
Yep, they
Because
did.
you're still measuring from that short side, so, yeah. So,
That's a good discussion, though. You're right, I think we should look at that and see. One, I'd like to find out what was the reason for 34, because I don't know.
yeah, and it's not like.
Is it arbitrary or?
It's not a
just
fire
because?
truck.
I know, it's like, I feel like that's what they always say.
Well, it's interesting, it has nothing to do with fire trucks.
Well, they have a ladder truck now.
Like the Captain Cook, no ladder can reach the top of the Captain Cook in Anchorage, or can reach even close to the top of most buildings, but that's why they have fire code that builds sprinklers in those
Yeah,
buildings.
the
and all
commercial
that kind of stuff,
sprinklers,
right?
yeah.
And so the fire trucks don't actually like matter, or the ladder truck or anything like that, so, but what we'll do is, we will put that on the agenda and be kind of putting together some information to talk about building height.
We can move it this
Yeah.
way.
Page, you know, that building height, what you're just saying, page 18, which has been the second number for the numbers you've been saying. B, building height. The purpose of building height standards to prevent loss of life or excessive property damage to the inability of the fire department to reach upper stories or roofs and to help maintain the character of neighborhoods. Maintain character in neighborhoods, so, yeah. So
Yeah,
that's in there.
and we talked to the fire chief,
Yeah.
and he's like, if you're doing multifamily, like your fire code, like how you have to build sprinklers in and some of the stuff like that, that's actually gonna be the thing that takes care of you. That's how they deal with all high-rise buildings,
Okay.
is like they can build really tall buildings
Okay.
because they have other systems in place
Fit
that take
code
care,
like that,
that
yeah,
take
yeah.
care of that. So it sounds like, for this topic, we'll bring it back around and maybe look up some of this, like, bring back some stuff on form-based codes.
Yeah, it's-
I like that.
And maybe some concepts that are more based on what you talked about having things that look like Seward. Or one, we'll make sure we have copies of those books available.
That's good, yeah, I'm gonna go
And
look
then,
through that.
yeah, maybe kind of look at going in that direction, that if you were to ever relax or change that code, but you would have to have these other kind of requirements in there, so that way you're making sure that everything is
Yeah.
taken care of.
Yeah, like Brandon was saying with those percentages, the ratios for other things you want to make sure you have. I think that's a good way to keep it.
Okay. So
Classy.
we'll
I printed that out.
do some homework, and
Okay.
and then just to come back around on the sign stuff, would the commission want to, do you want us to bring that back to you again on another, I think we actually need to bring it back to another work session when
session,
we're,
yes.
when we're doing the definitions and putting in some signs for that. and that
Yeah,
type
to
of thing,
tidy
so-
that up, because,
okay.
you know, it's a lot of times it's stuff
Yep.
that we talk through it and,
Okay,
Because
All right.
we still have to, we didn't finish the signs on awnings, right? And Marquis, right?
that other, the prior
That-
one where we had that discussion on the.
No.
It didn't line up, yeah.
Right, yeah.
So
yeah, so we still got more, which ties into this, but it
Yeah.
ties into that, so it'll be good to kind of get, and it's good that we're starting this, because this is kind of the base document that defines everything that we can move on from there.
Okay,
Is there anything else that you guys need from us as far as, or would like to see?
well, I think you got enough right now.
But this is kind of the fun stuff, I think, that we.
Yeah, it is,
we're-
especially when you're planning down the road and, you know,
Yeah.
helping to, you know, maintain the look and the, you know, what makes Seward great.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it makes me actually appreciate, I don't know who owns the building across the street there, but they, in the last month here, they totally sanded the sides off and really like went through and
Painted that,
filled it
yeah.
in and painted it, and it looks so good.
Yeah, yeah.
So I appreciate people that take, I mean, that they went to, I'm sure that was not cheap to do all that, but it's nice when they make their building look really good.
Yeah. Okay, well, does anybody have anything else to say or thoughts? No? Well, we will close out our work session at 7:21. All right.